Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well today. I am at Ohio State today, the Ohio State University. I know that we've had some connection problems, so we agreed just for me to record a video for you guys, and I hope you enjoy this. I'm on the campus today. It's a beautiful fall day here at the Ohio State University. It's Wednesday. So I thought what we do today is look at a chapter in 2 Corinthians 5. I think this is a really important chapter and a really relevant chapter to anything we do. So if you can follow along with me in 2 Corinthians 5, I'll just go ahead and hit some points here I think that are relevant. So when you come to 2 Corinthians 5, Paul starts out here talking about the issue of how, this is a temporal, physical body we have. He says here in verse 1, we know that when the tent which houses us here on earth is torn down, we have a permanent building from God, a building not made by human hands to house us in heaven. For in this tent, our earthly body, we groan with desire to have around us the home from heaven that will be ours. With this around us, we will not be found naked. Yes, we are in this body. We groan with the sense of being oppressed. It is not so much that we want to take something off, but rather to put something on over it, so that what must die must be swallowed up by the life. Moreover, it is God who has prepared us for this very thing as a pledge He has given us in His Spirit. So we're always confident. We know that so as long as we are in the home, in the body, we are away from the home with the Lord. We live by this trust, not by what we see. We are confident then that we'd much rather prefer to leave our home in the body to come to our home with the Lord. So Paul's talking, of course, about this temporal body and how one day we will obviously go on to be with God. Of course, he always struggled a little bit, if you read some of his other writings, about wanting to stay here but yet wanting to be with the Lord, because obviously he had a very important mission to do. And so we know that this life is very short and fragile. Of course, we look around the world, people are suffering. There's a lot of good things happening, but also a lot of challenges. There's a lot of things that make us think about how things are very fragile here and how we can be gone tomorrow. We have no guarantee of our lives tomorrow. And we know that we've lost some people at CJF this year, recently with Mike Campos. So we're sorry to see Mike go, but we know that he loved the Lord, and we know that's where he is right now. So as we go on in the chapter here, Paul goes on to talk about some very important things. He talks here a little bit. If you go down to verse 11, he says here, verse 9. Let's go back to verse 9. I don't want to skip that. He says here in verse 9, therefore, whether we are at home or away from home, we try our utmost to please him, for we all must appear before the court of judgment, Messiah's court of judgment, for the judgment seat of Christ, where everyone will receive the good or bad consequences for what he did while he was in his body. Now that's very interesting, because some people think that there's only one judgment. They assume that it's just like the great white throne judgment, where people go and stand before the Lord, and either they've come to know the Messiah or they haven't come to know the Messiah, and they're either going into the kingdom or they're not going into the kingdom. But this verse here is not really about that. That's about what happens to us as believers, as followers of the Messiah, that we actually have a judgment as well. Even though we've already accepted the Messiah into our lives, we actually will be judged by what we did on this earth, by the deeds of our body, whether good or bad. And so, of course, the Bible talks about through the New Testament about rewards and things like that. And I don't know what heaven will be like, whether we're going to be working there or whether there's more work for one to do more than the other. But the point is that we will stand before the Messiah and give an account for what we did in this life, of what God gave us. And so we're called to be good stewards of our time, our bodies, and the gifts he's given us in this world. And then he goes on here to say in verse 11, he says, now it is with the fear of the Lord before us that we try to persuade people, wherever God knows us as we really are, as I hope that in your conscience, know us as we really are. We're not recommending ourselves to you again, but give you reason to be proud of us, that we will be able to answer those who boast about a person's appearance and his inner qualities. And then it says in verse 13, if we are insane, it is for God's sake. If we are sane, it is for your sake. For the Messiah's love has hold of us, but because we are convinced that one man died on behalf of all mankind, which implies that all mankind was already dead, that he died on behalf of all of us in order that those who live should live no longer for themselves, but for the one who died and was raised. So that's very interesting, because, in this world, a lot of people try to find their purpose in life. We know that a lot of people are obsessed with purpose. Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life book sold like 28 million copies. And so a lot of times people are trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing in this world. Now, as I was saying last night to our students, obviously some people can find purpose in relationships and volunteering and helping others and their work and other things, but we know that those things are not really like your ultimate purpose or your objective purpose, because we come to know the Messiah. Obviously we no longer live for ourselves, we live for him. He is our ultimate purpose in life. And isn't it interesting that many people try to find their purpose in life through temporal things, and we know at the end of the day that those things are always shifting and changing. Obviously your job can change, relationships can change, circumstances can change, but we know because of who God is and who the Messiah is, that he is unchanging. We know that when we have our full identity in him and our purpose in him, that we've already reached our ultimate purpose. We've found our ultimate purpose, being image bearers of God and following the Messiah. Isn't it a shame that so many people around us do not have a purpose in that area, and they're just trying to go from something to something else, and of course they're being disappointed. So that's why we need to share the good news with them. And so then he goes on to say here that in verse 16, from now on we do not look for anyone from a worldly viewpoint, for even if we once regarded the Messiah from a worldly viewpoint, we no longer. Therefore, if anyone is united with the Messiah, he is a new creation. The old thing is past, what is come is fresh and new. All of this is from God, who through the Messiah has reconciled us to himself and has given us that work of reconciliation, which is that God in the Messiah was reconciling mankind to himself, not counting their sins against them, and entrusting us to the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are ambassadors of the Messiah, and in effect, God is making his appeal through us. What we do is appeal on behalf of the Messiah, be reconciled to God. And so, when we come to know the Messiah, obviously we receive a new identity. We're identified as an image bearer of God. We're identified in Christ. We're a new creation. But, some people say, well, I don't always feel like a new creation. Every day you get up, you may feel, like your body hurts. You don't feel like you're in a good mood today. But we know positionally, the Bible teaches we are always identified in the Messiah, and we are constantly being renewed, becoming more like him every day. It's an ongoing process. And so we don't want to act like we've already reached the pinnacle of where we need to be. That will happen when we're with the Lord someday, but we are in process right now. And then, of course, God calls us to be ambassadors of reconciliation. And so wherever we go, we're all ministers of reconciliation. It's not like I'm the only one just because I'm out on campus today that I'm the only ambassador of reconciliation. We're all called to be ministers of reconciliation. So people are broken away from God. They're not reconciled to God, and we bring them the message of how they can be reconciled and brought back to God and have that relationship. So those are some good points in this chapter. I just hope we think about the issue of purpose and how when we find our first purpose in the Messiah, we won't be worried so much about all these other things that are changing all the time, our circumstances, our life, our relationships, our job. We realize we're fully identified in the Messiah, even though we may not feel like we are, and realize that if we keep him at the center of our lives, we can go back to these truths every day. Remember, it's what you know that keeps you going forward over the long haul. It's not how you feel, it's what you know. Facts don't change, feelings can change. So having said that, I hope everyone has a great day. Blessings to you.